On the show, it's the post-game podcast from a blowout win over the Utah Jazz. Anthony Edwards with 41, Jaden McDaniels with another 20-10 double-double. A dominant Timberwolves performance. Will break down the key takeaways from this one as the Wolves win their 8th straight. It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. It is a victory Monday. The Wolves won twice over the weekend, Friday night and Sunday evening. Sunday over the Jazz. Today's the post-game pod. We'll talk about how the Wolves did it. It was actually one of the more, I don't know how to say impressive because it's the Jazz and the Wolves were at full strength outside of Mike Conley, who was sitting, but I would say more dominant performances of the year where the Wolves just simply forced the Jazz to do the things they weren't good at or force them into, bad situations, force a lot of turnovers, got out and ran. And there were also some good offensive moments for Minnesota in the flow, like in the half court early in the game when before the game was a complete blowout, which it was for most of the contest. So a lot to dig into. Of course, Ant gets 40 plus. Jaden has a big day and the bench plays really well. Also a lot of garbage time in the fourth quarter. So a lot to get to on the show today. First, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, you can subscribe to the Locked On Wolves daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. All right. So the Wolves come in after winning on Friday night over the Magic. Is that the Magic game? Yes, that was the Magic game. So 8 in a row. We know this is the soft part of the schedule. We've identified this. All the caveats still apply that the Timberwolves sometimes do the thing where they struggle against bad teams. We know that. So far, so good. During this stretch, they've beaten Miami barely. They did beat Charlotte and Philly, both pretty decisively. They also dominated Denver. They crushed the Spurs. Really, the only game in the lot is the Miami that was close was the Miami game. Orlando, they ended up only winning by 7, and it was touch and go. Remember, that was kind of a slog for most of the game until the Wolves really kind of started to put some distance late, and there was very limited garbage time at the end of that one. But that was a sort of professional win. As we said, I did the postcast on Friday night with Jack. Like, they would have gotten the Magic win probably in November with the way they were struggling in close late games against bad teams. But they were able to really kind of put them away. This game was really start to finish domination. I know Utah, like the Wolves got up double digits early. Utah pushed back second quarter, and then also a little mini third quarter run. I think they got to within 12 or 14. Second quarter, they got all the way to within 4 after the Wolves had led by like 15. And each time the Wolves called a timeout. And all right, let's get it together. Let's push this lead back out. Let's be aggressive again on the perimeter. To me, and trust me, we're going to talk about Ant. Ant had 41. Jay McDaniels had 20 and 12. Actually, nobody else scored more than 11 points in this game, which is kind of crazy. And the reason is because the Wolves generated so much offense off of turnovers, so it was just distributed more like who had the opportunities in the open floor. Also, basically the whole fourth quarter, there was like 10 minutes of garbage time in this game. So like Julius Randle only played 20 minutes. Ant only had to play 31. Rudy only played 26. You had 8 guys play off the bench, and everybody off the bench played more than 7 minutes in this game. So a really evenly distributed, I guess Ant and Jaden combined for 61 of 128 points, but still not quite half the points, and nobody else scored more than 11. So there's a lot to get to about those individual performances, but I really want to shine a light on the way the Timberwolves played, especially early, and a couple of individual players that really drove that. And what I want to highlight is forcing Jazz turnovers. Utah turned it over 22 times in this game. Minnesota had 14 steals. Now, Utah is dead last in the entire league in turnover rate. On cleaning the glass, it's not even close. They turn the ball over in 17.5% of their possessions. That's more than 3 percentage points higher than league average. and 1.3 percentage points higher than the next worst team, which is Portland. So by far, they're the worst in the league at turning the ball over. And there were a couple of moments early where the Wolves kind of gambled and made things a little bit more challenging for themselves, like put themselves in a bad spot defensively. We're in rotation and Utah scored. They're still a professional basketball team, one that beat the Wolves, albeit without Ant and some others, a couple of weeks ago, right before the streak started. And so, you can't mess around too much. But as it turns out, if they just played solid defense and were a little bit more on the aggressive side, instead of playing on their heels, which is where like Jaylen Clark, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, that's where those guys come in. Jaylen Clark was phenomenal in this game. It's not going to pop out in the box score. He ended up playing 17 minutes because of the garbage time. He was really, really good. He had 3 steals, including a couple in the backcourt. One where he scored, I think, on a layup in the open floor, and then just kind of hounded the inbound pass in the backcourt and looked like he was going to guard the ball, but then peeled off and picked off the backwards pass to the guy that was behind the guy that originally had the ball, and just knew that that's what was going to happen and just stole it and scored. There were a couple of plays like that. The aggressiveness of being up, and in his first stint, I think he got called for a foul right away when he got on the floor, and it was like, oh man, this is going to be one of those over-aggression type games. I shouldn't say that. These games where the officials are calling it in a way where Jaylen Clark isn't able to get away with some of the physicality defensively. Well, guess what? That was his only foul. In fact, there was a play where he knocked the ball away. I forget who the Jazz player was. Jazz player recovers to get it, but as he's doing it, shoves Jaylen Clark out of the way for a loose ball foul. It got Jaylen Clark free throws on the other end. Jaylen Clark attempted 8 free throws in 17 minutes. This is not a high-usage offensive player. This is not a guy who's driving to the basket in the half court and seeking foul calls like Anthony Edwards. This is just a guy that plays hard. And he got a couple of those loose ball foul calls where the Wolves were in the bonus, so he was able to go to the free throw line. The only shot he missed was an airball three-pointer in garbage time. He was 1 of 2 from the field, but 6 of 8 at the line. 8 points, 4 assists, 3 offensive rebounds. That's one of the things I had in my scouting report when the Wolves drafted him, was he's a really good rebounding guard. And for the Wolves, he's been an awesome offensive rebounder. All 3 of his rebounds in this game were on the offensive end of the floor. He also had the 3 steals I mentioned, the 4 assists. It was a +7 in 17 minutes, which includes garbage time, where the Wolves actually lost garbage time by 4 points. So when the game was still somewhat in the balance, pre-garbage time, he was awesome. And I credit him in a big way for setting the tone in the first half. When he came in the game, the Wolves, I think, were already up double digits. But he immediately was just pressing up on ball handlers for Utah, picking them up 3/4 court, aggressive in the half court. And I mentioned Jaden McDaniels, I mentioned Nickeil. Those guys, usually play that way, but not always. Jaylen Clark always does. He brought the energy in a matchup where all they needed to do was play solid and play hard defensively, and this could turn from an uncomfortable close win, close loss situation into a blowout. They're that much better than Utah. Utah's that bad at handling the ball themselves, or taking care of the ball, I should say. All they needed to do was apply a little bit more pressure to force the issue just a bit, to be aggressive and not play on their heels. That's what they did, and it worked, to the tune of 22 Utah turnovers, and 22 Utah turnovers, 14 Minnesota steals. Minnesota had 26 points off of 22 Utah turnovers, which isn't a crazy number, but it's good, and 20 overall fast break points. Remember, Minnesota doesn't play that fast. To have 20 fast break points is pretty legit. I want to dig into a couple more of those numbers. We'll talk about some of the other individual performances. We'll peek ahead at what's next on the schedule. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more during this regular season, 24-25, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Ant almost did it. He had 41 on Sunday. That would have been today. It would have been Monday if he had just scored 9 more points. If he had played more, think about it. He scored 41 points in what? How many minutes did I say he played? 31 minutes, 41 points in 31 minutes. So he almost did it. There's plenty of ways you could take advantage of the deal. Maybe it's a game day feast. Epic 50-point performance. The next day you want to celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, burgers from whatever your favorite spot is, delivered right to your door. Or maybe it's a Friday and on Saturday evening, you want to stay up late, watch highlights, just want a midnight snack. Dash Pass is perfect to grab something delicious while saving big. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here. Selection Sunday was yesterday. The brackets are out, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's plenty of favorites. I transparently need to dig into the bracket a little bit more, but there's also some Cinderella stories. There's some underseeded teams. I saw Louisville is only an 8 seed despite being ranked like top 15 for most of the season. Feels like maybe I know they've got a tough second round matchup if they win in the first round, but FanDuel makes it super easy to back teams like Louisville or others with spreads, totals, and game props. You can stay in the action. Tournament games happen, of course, almost every day this week starting Tuesday. There's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is so simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Okay. So we talked about the Timberwolves generating turnovers, generating fast break opportunities against a sloppy Jazz offense, and that's exactly what happened. They actually didn't shoot the ball well at all from three-point range. Minnesota didn't. They only attempted 5 more threes than Utah. They only made 2 more, and there were some individual performances that were a little rough around the edges in terms of three-point shooting. I mean, Ant was volume shooting the heck out of the ball. He shot 14 threes, only 13 twos. He somehow squeezed the trigger 27 times in 31 minutes. I believe he had 20 first quarter points. It was early and often, and who knows if it had anything to do with like last game against the Jazz, he was suspended. Remember that? And so I don't know. It's not like he has anything against the Jazz, like a personal vendetta or anything. I think he was just salty that he missed an opportunity to beat a team, I guess. I don't know. But he came out on fire and then just kept gunning. Like when he was in the game, to have 27 shot attempts in 31 minutes is nuts. Like think about if he plays 42 minutes like he does occasionally. That's like shooting the ball 39 or 40 times in 42 minutes. It's just crazy. 27 shots in 31 minutes, but 41 points on 27 shots isn't awful. Like it's not outstanding, but it's not terrible efficiency. He only was 5 of 14 on threes, which again isn't awful. It's not quite to, his 40% plateau that he's typically at. 4 of 6 at the line. I thought he was actually pretty aggressive getting into the paint. I think he only shot like 2 shots that would be considered mid-range jumpers. He was at the rim a lot. He had the massive dunk in the first quarter. He had, a bunch of threes that he made early, but he also had a couple of tough layups in the third quarter as the Wolves were trying to put some distance between themselves and Utah. The Wolves had 37 in the third quarter, their highest scoring quarter, as they really did put the game away, and Ant didn't have to play at all in the fourth quarter. So early on, it was more about the threes outside of that crazy dunk, but second half, Ant was aggressive getting downhill, going to the rim, and the Wolves as a whole, I thought, did a pretty good job with that on a night where they only shot, sub 33% from outside the arc. Naz was 0 of 5. Nikhil was 1 of 4. DiVincenzo was just 3 of 8, which again, not a bad number. Like it's fine. It's right around league average, but it's lower than what you'd expect to see out of DiVincenzo. Of course, Conley didn't play. And then in garbage time, like Garza was 1 of 2. And Jaylen Clark airballed that 3. Rob Dillingham was 0 of 2 on threes. So like the 3-point shooting just wasn't quite there for Minnesota, but there was so much. They did so well getting to the rim and scoring in the paint. They had 26 free throw attempts in this game. They only made 18 of them. So under 70% at the free throw line. They had 66 points in the paint. Utah, Walker Kessler played 31 minutes, didn't play the night. He had 19 rebounds. He had no blocks in this game. In fact, the Jazz as a team had 0 blocks in this game, the Wolves dominated the paint, right? Rudy didn't have to do a whole lot. The Wolves as a team themselves had 6 blocks, which again, doesn't tell the whole story. But if a team has 0 blocks, it tells you they weren't doing a whole lot to protect the rim. I mean, Rudy had 2 in 26 minutes. Jaden had 2 in 26 minutes. The Wolves did a much better job than Utah, outscoring them 66 to 50 points in the paint. We talked about fast break points already. The Wolves won that 20 to 10. And offensive glass, again, like they didn't do a whole lot of that the other night, like Friday against the Magic. I mean, the Minnesota, I think they had like 6 offensive rebounds. They had 16 in this game. We talked already about the 3 from Jaylen Clark off the bench. Reid did not have a good shooting performance, was 0 of 5 from 3, as we mentioned, 2 of 10 overall from the field, but he had 9 rebounds, 4 of them on the offensive glass. And again, in short minutes, Jaden and Rudy each played 27 or less minutes, 26 minutes for Rudy, 27 for Jaden. They each had 3 offensive rebounds, and Julius Randle was quiet, only played 20 minutes, had a couple of offensive boards himself. So the Wolves did a really good job, keeping that activity level up on the offensive glass. And, that was that was another thing that drove this. I mean, it was forcing turnovers. It was scoring in the open floor. It was points in the paint / getting to the free throw line. And then the other thing that's just kind of always been there since January 1st is offensive rebounding. I'm going to go straight into studs and duds. I do want to close with like a West bigger picture type thing very quickly. I mean, we have the Wolves play again tonight, and but I want to kind of reset after the weekend where the West is and look at some. ESPN had a West tiers article that came out, so I want to dig into that real quickly at the end. So quickly, studs and duds. Anthony Edwards, obviously 41 points on 27 shots in 31 minutes, an all-time just gunner performance. But hey, it worked. It was a high volume showing. He only had 2 assists, 1 turnover, wasn't really passing the ball much, but it worked out. He was a game high plus 31 or tied with Jaden for that number, and it was just really good. As we said, aggressive overall early on, a lot of 3-point shots, aggressive in the paint in the third quarter, did a little bit of everything in this game, and just the brilliance of Anthony Edwards. It really was. Yet another 40-plus point game. Jaden McDaniels also gets a stud. We haven't talked about him much outside of just mentioning he had 20 and 12 in this game, including 3 offensive rebounds, was 8 of 13 shooting, made a couple of 3-point shots as well, 2 of 3 outside the arc, got to the line for a couple of shots, 2 assists, 2 blocks, no turnovers, tied with Ant for a game high plus 31. I mean, like, I think Jim Peterson made this comment on the broadcast, or maybe it was Marnie Gellner. I think it was Jim Peterson. I think he mentioned that, like nationally, nobody's talking. Like if you look at this win streak, nobody's mentioning Jaden McDaniels nationally, because if you're not watching the games, like he's not putting up gaudy scoring performances consistently. Like he's not getting 20 plus every night, but he's doing it much more often than he used to. And he's putting up a lot of these like 11 to 16 point performances that are efficient. And he's doing other stuff too. Actually, if you go back to that win over OKC prior to the All-Star break, he scored 20 plus points in 6 games. And Minnesota's played, I'm ballparking this, about 14 games. I mean, like nearly half the time he's scoring 20 plus, which is a lot for Jaden. Month of March, he's averaging 16.9. So we'll call it 17 points, 7 rebounds, and he's shooting 47% on threes. He's made 2 or more threes, actually exactly 2 threes in each of the last 4 games. And that's not even the point. When I talked more about Jaden last week, I think I did a couple different episodes where I talked a lot about McDaniels, is he's actually, the volume of 3-point attempts is down overall for him. But he's opening up more open 3-point shots because he's been so aggressive putting the ball on the floor, getting into the paint, and teams have had to respect that he can drive the basketball from the corners, especially. The corner crashing thing is still a big deal for Jaden McDaniels. The offensive glass, again, 3 offensive boards in this game. I like Jaden McDaniels has legit been what the Wolves. I mean, Julius Randle's been great since he came back from injury, but if you take a slightly wider look at things pre-Randle's return, I mean, it's hard to argue he's not been their second best player. I know, I guess all 3 of Gobert, Randle, DiVincenzo have been out with injury, and McDaniels has been, knock on wood, reliable and on the court. But like he's been legit good over the last few weeks on both ends of the floor. And this is another game where he was super good defensively. Third stud for this game, a little trickier. I think I go, well, actually, you could go Nikhil. I'm going to go Jaylen Clark for all the reasons I said off the top. I don't need to rehash everything, but I'll just give you his line real quick. 8 points on just 2 shots. He was 6 of 8 at the free throw line. 3 rebounds, all offensive, 4 assists, 3 steals, 0 turnovers, and only 1 foul committed in 17 minutes. A masterful Jaylen Clark performance. Honorable mention, shout out to Nikhil Alexander-Walker, 9, 6, and 3 in 21 minutes, 3 of 6 shooting. Took the ball to the basket a couple of times, only made 1 3-pointer. He was a plus 14 in just 21 minutes off the bench. I thought he was really good in this game. I don't really have duds. Nas didn't shoot the ball well. He was 2 of 10 shooting, but I thought he was active defensively and made, for the most part, was making the right plays on offense. The 9 rebounds in 20 minutes are great. The 4 offensive boards, I thought he played well. Garbage time, nothing really all that notable. I thought Josh Minott looked really good. Garza missed a bunch of bunnies in the paint. They were being physical with him, and I don't know how he had 0 offensive rebounds. I feel like he was playing like patty cake on the backboard, but a lot of missed shots in close from him. TJ Shannon saw rotation minutes for, he played 19 minutes in this game. 10 of them were rotation minutes, and he was good. Jaylen Clark, we already talked about. Bones Highland got to make his Timberwolves debut, had 1 bucket, 1 assist in 7 minutes, was fine. A little bit of Olay defense, which is what you get with Bones. But I thought Minott was actually, to me, stood out the most in garbage time. His activity level, dove on the floor for a loose ball, made a corner 3. That's the sort of thing that's going to give him a shot if the Wolves have an injury or somebody fouls out or something and they need some defense. Even if it's just little stints here and there, I think Minott was really good. All right, let's close by peeking at the Western Conference overall outlook right now, or the playoff picture, and then also what's up next for Minnesota. They play tonight. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When you start using Monarch, you might just realize how much you spend on something like, say, I don't know, food delivery or whatever else that you maybe don't, different subscription services, right? But with Monarch Money, you can budget smarter and you can save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. It's an all-in-one convenience of the Monarch Money app. Managing money with your partner also is smoother than ever. Maybe you have a partner that you share accounts or have separate accounts that you kind of like coordinate what you guys are spending, what bills you're paying, etc. You can set goals and stay on the same page without the stress with the easy collaboration inside the Monarch Money app. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, let's talk Western Conference because the Wolves just keep winning. And Golden State's got a bit of a tough schedule. They won again over the weekend, despite who'd they beat? Was it the Knicks? They beat the Knicks over the weekend. They beat the Knicks by 3 in a real bloodbath, 97-94. They have the Nuggets tonight, Monday night, but they've kept pace, or I guess really the Timberwolves have kept pace with Golden State. Sitting here right now, the Wolves are still 7th in the Western Conference. They now have 40 wins, and they're 7th in the Western Conference. Golden State's won 7 straight. Minnesota's won 8 straight. Minnesota's 1 more loss and 1 more win than Golden State. So they're in a virtual tie for 6th, but winning percentage-wise, they're technically 7th because they're 1 back in the loss column. Minnesota is 1.5 clear of the Clippers, who are in 8th, and they're now a very comfortable, I don't mind saying that, a very comfortable 5.5 games clear of the Kings, who are down in 9th in the West. The Mavericks are 3 below 500 and barely in 10th. The Mavericks and Suns and Kings are all in free falls with between 31 and 33 wins in the 9 to 11 spots in the West. So if the Wolves just keep doing what they need to do, they're going to stay in the top 8, and they're 1.5 clear of 8. 7 is obviously better than 8. You get to host that play-in game, but the Wolves have their sights set on passing Golden State. Again, virtual tie. Golden State's got a tough game against against Denver tonight. I think they have Milwaukee next. And the Wolves are only 2.5 behind the Lakers, who are 5th in the Western Conference. Minnesota still has a better point differential by far than the Warriors and Lakers. I know that's not what counts, but it also suggests that the Wolves are better than their record. We've said that all year long. Some of the weird late close losses early in the season, we've seen a bunch of that. The Wolves, a lot of that's execution issues, but they probably have some bounces to go their way yet here in the future. They're only, again, 2.5 behind the Lakers for 5. They're only 3.5 behind Memphis for 4. Both the Lakers and Memphis lost late last week before winning over the weekend. And so Minnesota has picked up a game there. 3.5 out of the 4 spot with, 13 games left? It's on the table. Like, it's still not out of the question, especially with the schedule the Wolves have. Obviously, the first order of business is getting out of the play and getting to 6. And that's very doable. The Wolves have a much easier schedule on paper than Golden State has sitting here right now. and they're lurking to get to 5 against the Lakers. I mean, you get to 6, and right now it's impossible to know what the matchup is. The Rockets, Nuggets, and Grizzlies all have the exact same record between 2 and 4. So it's funny. The Wolves are actually, they're 3.5 out of the 4 spot. They're also 3.5 out of the 2 spot. They just have 5 teams to leap to get there. My bold prediction at the All-Star break, I'll keep reminding everyone, was that the Wolves would get to 4th in the Western Conference. I also said they'd win 51 games, which means they'd have to go 11-2 the rest of the way. That seems unlikely. But hey, they're giving it a go with this winning streak and very winnable games upcoming. The Western Conference tiers that were mentioned over at ESPN, and this was Kevin Pelton, who generally does a really good job, has the Thunder as a clear-cut favorite. Obviously, tier 2 is Denver, and he calls this the most dangerous contenders at full strength. Denver, Golden State, and the Lakers. It's fair because obviously Luka, obviously Steph Curry, and Jimmy Butler, and Jokic, right? Like, so that makes sense. I get it. Then he has other conference finals contenders. He has Houston, Memphis, and Minnesota as the only others that are mentioned there. And he says, although it's been overshadowed by the Lakers and Warriors, the Timberwolves have been the NBA's hottest team in March, 7-0. Why is it overshadowed? Well, because it's the Lakers and Warriors, right? There's no other reason. The Wolves are undefeated with a plus 14.9 differential. A very easy schedule, just one above 500 to put in that span, and is shooting the 3 ball like crazy, which is true. But I'll point out the volume matters as well, and the volume is much higher than their opponents. It says this is finally the team the Wolves envisioned, with Randle as a playmaker and DiVincenzo hot from 3-point range. The challenge is the standings. Minnesota's only made up a half game on Golden State in March. They're both 2.5 games back of the West Pack. Despite the easiest remaining schedule, the Timberwolves are the most likely of these teams to land in the play-in. I disagree. I don't think they'll land in the play-in. I understand how the math works. I know the odds are they will, but it's not by much. I bet they're out of the play-in. It says a first-round rematch against Denver as the number 7 seed may not be so bad. They've won all 3 head-to-head matchups by 52, and they play again on April 1st in the regular season. The Timberwolves also split to the Thunder. The path from the play-in to the conference finals, while doable, is long. I don't really disagree with most of this outside of I think they do get out of the play-in. I think that they are a better team than both the Lakers and Warriors. We could have the conversation about Grizzlies and Rockets and Nuggets, actually. But this version of this Wolves team that, knock on wood, is relatively healthy and able to now get rest for Conley and, get up and get some garbage time rest for guys like Ant and Rudy, and Jaden McDaniels playing the way he is. Obviously, they need to bottle this. Obviously, they need to, continue doing this moving forward. And that's all much easier said than done. But with this schedule, Indiana, New Orleans, Indiana, Phoenix, Detroit, those are all games. Once again, the Wolves will be favored. And at Indiana is not an easy game by any stretch. It's a 1-game road trip. Pacers are decent. But all games they'll be favored in. They very likely in the next 5, they probably win 4 out of 5, right? Or I should say the next 6, they probably win 5 out of 6, I would think. Even if the streak breaks, as long as they don't let go of the rope and they continue pushing, going into that April 1st matchup against Denver, there's a real shot that they're playing to get into the 5 or 4 seed at that point. I really do believe that. All right, tonight it's Wolves Pacers, the first time, weirdly, that we've seen Indiana all season. It's the only team the Wolves, actually Indiana and Brooklyn are the 2 teams the Wolves haven't played yet. So I'll see the Pacers tonight at home. I don't have time to really preview it, but expect a high-paced game, or fast-paced game. The Wolves are okay with that, with the way they've been playing lately, as long as they take care of the basketball. Should be a fun one. Luke and Jack will have the live postcast for you over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. That audio will be right here. It'll be the next episode in your audio feed tonight, and then I'll be back Tuesday morning, early Tuesday, with the post-game podcast here at Locked On Wolves. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You could also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves, and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Of course, you can also subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.